Of all the incredible sci-fi film worlds, I think Children of Men's is my favorite. So much care was put into crafting every set, every background, every sound playing from a distant radio or advertisement from a televised billboard. And the way the film's characters are shaped by this world, or resist this world, it's all just a show of unmatched genius. In every frame of this film, its world is oozing with theme and purpose. But what is this purpose? What is this film's world trying to show us? Well, the purpose of this world is to show us a world with a lack of purpose. What I mean is that the people living in this world have been robbed of life's purpose. Seeing as how no children have been born for 18 years, the extinction of the human race seems inevitable. This is a world without hope. A world with characters who have no future, no legacy, no purpose, no posterity. Many of the characters in this story desperately look for fulfillment in any place they can, but really, their struggle is pointless, and their lives meaningless. Because if there isn't going to be a future, then how can there be any meaning in the present? Our reason for existing is tethered to the future. The point in all of this is to create and inspire the future. We have kids. We produce not only the next generation, but the ideas and inventions that they will enjoy. The purpose to life is found within the creation of more life, the creation of the future. Children of Men asks what happens when we lose this ability. What happens when there is no future? What happens when we no longer carry the notion of a legacy? When our lives no longer have meaning? This is what the people in Children of Men are faced with. A world without purpose. And how do they respond to this lack of purpose? They desperately search for a replacement to it, for anything that gives even the slightest feeling of fulfillment. Even though their future is doomed, they continue to hunt for purpose, refusing to admit that the artificial is all they will find. They try to add meaning to their life with religion, with art, with politics, with anything really. They are so desperate they even look for purpose and think that they find it in the youngest person alive. They worship the 18-year-old celebrity known as Baby Diego, for he is the closest thing they have to a representation of the future. During the first shot of the film, Baby Diego's death is breaking on the news. Everyone is just devastated by the death of this young adult they've never met. Our main character, Theo, however, couldn't care less about Baby Diego. Theo doesn't care about how fragile the future is. He doesn't care about the world and its problems. The only thing motivating Theo in this scene is mixing alcohol into his coffee. Theo is numb to the environment that surrounds him. And in a world like this, maybe ignoring the scenery is the right choice. It's disgusting. Pollution fills the air, trash covers the streets, and glowing advertisements cover the buildings. And then, of course, there's the violence. The hopelessness of this world has reduced many to brutal, primal tribalism. If the people in this world can't find a reason to live, they'll certainly find a reason to kill. With his ears still ringing from the bombing, Theo shows up to work. He notices that even his co-workers are grieving this Baby Diego. Even though a few minutes ago, a few blocks away, a terrorist attack killed a building full of innocent people, they're only concerned with this Baby Diego. With all of his co-workers crying around him, Theo figures he can exploit this tragedy.
I seem to be more affected by Baby Diego's death than I realized, sir. If you wouldn't mind, I'd appreciate it if I could finish my day's work at home.
Think about what this says about this world. Theo was just a victim in a terrorist attack. He was seconds away from being killed. He saw other human beings blown into pieces. He has hearing damage and is most likely traumatized. That should be a reason to not have to go to work that day. But instead, Theo knows that being traumatized by a celebrity's death is a more viable excuse. In reality, though, Theo can't bring himself to care about anything. He doesn't have a cause to fight for or an ideology to believe in. He's smart. He sees the truth. He sees the pointlessness of hoping or caring or believing in or valuing anything. And again, the people who surround Theo don't share in his disillusionment. Baby Diego's death is sad to them. They still care about things. Look at their desks compared to Theo's. They are covered in trinkets and mementos, while his is mostly empty. Look at his boss's office. Even this guy has his thing that he's passionate about. It's cricket, the sport. Photos and cricket bats line his walls, and there's even a basket of cricket balls on his desk. Even his coffee cup is themed. Humans are programmed to invest their passion in things, most importantly in their family. But without the possibility for this, all the leftover passion has to go somewhere. Without the fulfillment of having children, without the promise of a future, people have resorted to some desperate artificial replacements. Just look at how many people in this world have pets. How pets are obsessed over and treated like children. So many dogs and cats and even exotic-looking birds. Even in the first shot of the film, we see an older woman holding her dog inside a coffee shop. It's not left in the car or tied up outside the building. No, it's carried inside the building as if it were a child. In this shot, we can see a business that exists entirely to sell clothes for cats. And then here is an advertisement for a spring season collection of dog clothes. Of course, the hoodie in the ad is baby blue. Nigel has these fancy dogs, whatever those are, and when Theo crosses into the rich side of town, because of course this world still has a dramatic wealth divide, we see people with fancy poodles, zebras, and even camels. Everyone in this world cares way too much about animals. Serious, just rewatch this movie and look for the pets. Everyone has pets. But not Theo, unless you count the plant that we can see in his bedroom. As you'd expect, he hasn't been watering it. He's left it to die and wilt away. If you combine this with the quietest commercial that's playing on the television, you might be able to see the theme that's presenting itself. Some people in this world aren't like Theo's coworkers. They aren't like the rest of the masses. These people have given up on passion, on chasing fulfillment. And this makes sense. I mean, as you'd expect, there's plenty of despair in this world. There are plenty of people out there who just prefer to not even bother. An obvious clue to this is that Quietus commercial. It is a suicide drug that's being marketed on the television. We can see ads for it on the street, on buses. Really, it's everywhere.
The Daddy government hands out suicide kits and antidepressants in the rations, but ganja is still illegal.
Not everyone is suicidal, though. Many just resort to numbing themselves with pleasure and poisons. Sex shops, bars, and other merchants of vice fill the town. There are tons of advertisements for some sort of sex drug called Niagara. I'm guessing it helps in the moisture department, a way to keep sex feeling like it did when they were young. And then we can also see advertisements for another drug called Bliss. Happiness in a pill is what it says, and it doesn't get any more hedonistic than that.
You smoking?
Yeah, it's not working.
All Theo really wants to do is smoke and drink. And boy, does he do a lot of drinking. He is a horrible alcoholic. Throughout the entire movie, he's constantly drinking his liquor. The only goal Theo has is to numb the pain, to ignore the world around him. But the world doesn't always want to be ignored. If this world were a plant, then its owner forgot to water it a long time ago. This is a world that is dying.
You know that ringing in your ears? That's the sound of the ear cells dying, like their swan song. Once it's gone, you'll never hear that frequency again. Enjoy it while it lasts.
Due to the desperation of the world, the British government has been forced into fascism to keep order. Even to take a short train ride to see Jasper, Theo must cross countless government checkpoints. Propaganda on the TV shows that the rest of the world is in an even worse state of ruin. Britain is the only place where society hasn't completely collapsed. Ironic, considering Britain, in many ways, was responsible for creating what we think of as the modern world. Apparently, it will also be where it dies. But this has produced an immigration crisis, with people from all over the world fleeing for Britain. But resources are drained in this world. Britain doesn't have the room, so immigrants are systematically hunted down like animals, and even processed in ways that reminds me of livestock in a slaughterhouse. Anti-immigrant propaganda can be found in nearly every scene of this movie. A little sign here or a billboard there, even a message about reporting illegal immigrants plays on Theo's train. The government in this world appears to be incredibly oppressive and maybe sometimes even evil. But what choice do they have? This is a world that's constantly at war, always on the brink of total collapse.
Even if they discovered the cure for infertility, it doesn't matter. Too late. World went to shit.
You know what it is, Theo? I just don't think about it.
People of this world are just so broken and terrified and unfulfilled, they'll blindly follow anyone or anything that claims to have the answers. Most people in this world ignore the cruel truth and instead cling to something to believe in, to groups, or ideologies, or religions. Religion, in particular, is everywhere in Children of Men.
Renouncers, are those the ones that kneel down for a month for salvation?
Nah, they're the repenters. The renouncers flagellate themselves for the forgiveness of humanity.
Oh, right.
This abundance of religious thought in this world is, honestly, it's self-explanatory. If people can believe this is all part of God's plan, or that maybe there can be a future for humanity in an afterlife, then it makes the sting of the present less painful. It's a self-feeding cycle. As the war and poverty and misery of this world increases, so does religious participation. In many ways, this is no different from the real world. The populations trapped in lower standards of living are much more susceptible to extremist dogma. The worse the conditions, the more dangerous the belief systems. For instance, in the film, in the poorer areas of London, there are extreme Christian groups chanting annoyingly. But then in the refugee camps, where people live much worse than the poorer people in the city do, they live in filth and chaos and war. Well, we can see 100 AK-47s being fired into the air by the latest Muslim revolt. But this isn't just about the spiritual. The war drum of politics, of revolutionary ideology, of populist uprisings also plays a strong part. It makes sense that people could be sucked into these groups in this world. You know, fighting against your political enemies, against the system, doing the us versus them thing, it always feels right. It feels purposeful. And again, in this world, that's what people want most. That is what they are lacking. That is what they crave. It is that purpose. Julian and her activist group called the Fishes have obviously found their sense of purpose in politics. They exist to resist the government. They find fulfillment by believing in something, by fighting for something. But as far as Theo's concerned, fighting for a political cause doesn't make much sense. Because who cares what flag is flying if everyone under the flag is going to be dead?
You were the activist. I just wanted to get laid. I don't talk politics.
It's all you ever used to do.
That was 20 years ago. I'm a lot more successful now.
Theo's cousin Nigel runs the Arc of the Arts. It's an institution where world-famous works of art are preserved. Theo and the philosophy that he represents, he can't help but find Nigel ridiculous.
Pretty rummy, huh? My mom had a plastic one in the bathroom. It was a lamp.
Nigel's passion is art. He thinks that it means something, even if eventually no one will be able to see it.
100 years from now, there won't be one sad fuck to look at any of this. What keeps you going?
Either way, Nigel has a lot to live for, including a young son, who he is very protective over. He makes sure that he takes his pills and eats healthy. Nigel even takes pills himself. You know, he tries to stay healthy. He finds meaning in his job. He holds on to hope. He stays positive. He tries to not destroy his body. Meanwhile, we have Theo, who numbs the pain with his smoking and drinking, you know, the poisons he wasn't even allowed to bring into this institution.
It's hard for me to look at you. He had your eyes.
When Theo meets back up with Julian and the Fishes, we learn that Julian was the mother of his child, but the baby died. Note the old baby carriage that they walk past. This explains why Theo doesn't care. Like the entire human race, his child has been taken away. And yet, While Theo has grown cynical, wallowing in the painful past, Julian has moved on, desperately trying to find purpose in fighting against the government. She doesn't let the past weigh her down. Her parents were killed by a nuclear bomb in New York, and she shrugs it off. She has committed herself to politics, to trying to change the world for the better, while Theo wants to pretend the world doesn't exist. When Theo asks Julian where they stand, like as a couple, they haven't seen each other in years, they were very much in love before this tragedy tore them apart, she kisses him. This gives our character of Theo, it gives him a brief moment of actually feeling some hope, of actually valuing something. For the first time, we see him legitimately happy. But this quickly evaporates when Julian is killed in an ambush. You can tell a lot about these characters by how they react to Julian's death. While Miriam does some spiritual voodoo stuff, Theo takes out the alcohol and cigarettes. Like so many other people in this world, Miriam has found some purpose in religion or some sort of spirituality, some school of thought that she can use to trick herself into thinking that this all means something or something.
But everything happens for a reason.
That I don't know.
You tell me the fucking reason in that.
It's all part of a bigger thing.
Shut up! Shut up.
Again, two different sides of a philosophy here. After Julian is killed, Theo is taken to the fish's hideout to stay until the heat dies down. It's at this point in the film when Theo finally learns what's going on, when he finally figures out what is at stake. The girl who's being transported across the country, Key, well, she's the key to the future. She's pregnant. And this political group, the Fishes, are in possession of her. And now that Julian, their leader, is dead, the Fishes have to debate what to do with the baby once it's born. Basically, they want to use this baby as a political tool. Now just think about how absolutely insane that is. Even though this pregnancy is a miracle that should supersede all other motivations, these people are so possessed by their political ideology, they'd put the baby in danger. This right here just shows the power of political tribes.
Yeah, well, whatever's going on, whatever your political ideas are, it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter.
Oh, come on.
Theo tries to intervene during this meeting, but for the most part, he's fine with just being pushed to the sidelines. This changes, however, when he learns that these people, the Fishes, are behind Julian's death. She was betrayed by her own because they disagreed with her direction of the group. Theo also realizes that they are going to kill him next. This revelation gives him a much-needed jolt. This is the thing that pushes our hero out on his epic adventure. From this point on in the movie, he's no longer a cynical, passive participant. The fear of death, and of course an actual greater purpose, has mobilized him into action. So by the time we get to the near end of this movie, by the time Key goes into labor after arriving at Brex Hill, Theo has changed as a character. He's had his arc. He has realized that life is worth fighting for, that there is a reason to have hope, that his life has more meaning than he could have ever known. In this moment when Theo helps Key have the baby, he is no longer an uncaring cynic. He has become a selfless hero. What I find interesting about this scene is how the cigarettes and alcohol are used to show this. Remember, throughout the film, Theo's smoking and drinking has really defined him. Or maybe not defined him, but they've been used to represent a certain philosophy. They show his numbness, his lack of care for himself and life in general. But look at how Theo's vices are used in this scene. At the beginning of the labor scene, Theo gives his pack of cigarettes to the woman who was giving them the tour of the room. She's asking him for a smoke because he's a person who just came from the real world and he just entered into this hellscape refugee camp where no one really has cigarettes. Maybe he has some, she's asking for one, and he gives her the whole pack just to try and get her to go away so him and Key can have some privacy. And then he uses his liquor to sterilize his hands before delivering the baby. And it's not like he uses just a little splash of the liquor and rubs it all over his hands, which is probably all that would be required. No, he dumps out the entire bottle and completely coats his hands. He dumps out all of it, much like how he gives away his entire pack. This little touch in the film is telling us that Now that Theo has become this hero, he is able to rid himself of these cigarettes and the alcohol because he no longer has a use for these tools. He no longer needs them to numb himself because now there is a baby. There is a miracle for him to value and to fight for. Why would he want to be numb? Now his life has a purpose. And with the ending implying that babies are being born again, it seems that the rest of the world might too. Children of Men shows us how people would try to find purpose in a purposeless world. All the tribalism and groupthink and passions and religions and ideologies and groups, what the film says is that if we don't have a future, then none of it matters. I think the Miracle Ceasefire scene shows this best. It's a brief little moment where everyone suddenly remembers what's really important. Even though the soldiers of both sides are dedicated to the goal of wiping the other out, they both stop shooting when they recognize a child. No matter their political or national or ideological loyalties, deep down they know all of this, all of us, our future, that's more important than whatever thing they're fighting for right now. Your group, your God, your flag, you may think that it matters, but at the end of the day, it's not what really matters. If you like this video, then give it a like and comment and subscribe and all that stuff. I still have more content for Children of Men videos. I can do more of them. If this one gets good views and if I get some comments of people actually wanting that to happen, then maybe I'll be able to throw another one of these together. I love the movie. I'd love to do more, but I guess I'll leave that up to you guys. Oh, and share this video too. Please, I'm begging you. Please share it to whatever. I don't know. I don't know why to share things. That's why I don't have that many views. I need your guys' help.